Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man Season 1 is finally over, and though I had heavy doubts going in, this show surprised me on every level. From spectacular Spider-Man-esque storytelling to the most unique character work in recent MCU history, though I have some core issues, this show absolutely rocks. In the MCU's first ever Spider-Man series, we follow a different universe's Peter Parker in his ever-expanding New York City facing heroes and villains like no other.
What'd you say your name was again?
Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. Oh man, this is incredible!
Before we get into it, if you don't want to miss out on more of my movie or TV show reviews, hit that subscribe button. But don't waste any more time, let's get right into it. And warning, this video will be containing spoilers for Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man Season 1, but I want to start with my favorite thing about this entire series, and it is the fact that this tells such an amazing Peter Parker story. In my opinion, this is the best characterization we've gotten since pre-MCU Spider-Man. And I wasn't the biggest fan of Homecoming and Far From Home when they first came out, and I still think that the overall story of Peter Parker is pretty lackluster, but I think they do a good job in No Way Home. But before that, I mean, this series in and of itself gives us so much about not only Peter Parker, but other characters, whether they're changed from the comics, original characters. Anything that has to do with Peter in this series feels far more explored than anything we've gotten in the MCU so far. And the storytelling was just so inconsistent in the MCU, and making this a multiversal story was such a great idea. And what encapsulates that so well, in my opinion, is the fact that from episode 1 to the finale, they are able to incorporate this idea of a multiversal time loop. Obviously, not the entire series is taking place in a loop, but it is taking place within a time that Doctor Strange is able to travel back to within the same continuity of a season. And that in and of itself tells me that you can make a slightly multiversal story with Spider-Man really well done. On top of this, there is just amazing conversations that I can pick out from the entirety of this season. The Norman and Peter first dinner scene. There's two massive sequences of just straight monologues going on in the final 2 episodes. It is just so well done, and it does feel like the creators behind this show understand Spider-Man. And again, we haven't got this level of Spider-Man characterization since Spectacular Spider-Man, in my opinion. And I'll talk more specifically about what I want from season 2 at the very end of this video, but I do want to quickly mention the evolution of this project, because I think making this a multiversal Spider-Man story was the best possible thing to do. It didn't necessarily have a troubled production, but rather it was originally pitched and announced in 2021 with the title of Spider-Man Freshman Year, and everyone in the audience obviously assumed that this would be Tom Holland's freshman year as Spider-Man. And then back at San Diego Comic-Con 2022, it was announced as an exploration of Tom Holland's Spider-Man origin in the MCU. But he was confirmed to not return in the voice cast. And then the character designs were released, and literally nothing fit within the MCU timeline, as we saw Doc Ock, Scorpion, etc., and his first big villain was supposed to be Vulture in the MCU, obviously. Different villains, different designs, different story ideas. We finally found out that this would be a totally different universe's Spider-Man, which honestly, I like that idea a lot. Making this into a multiversal Spider-Man story gives us such great new characters. It gives us brand new world elements that we just can't really do in the MCU without a lot of collateral damage. It gives us really interesting action sequences, and we'll get into the animation later. And it also just gives us a lot more potential for suits, different types of action sequences, different character dynamics. This is what makes it fully feel like a comic book, is the fact that we are able to do it so separately from everything we know and love about Spider-Man. And that's why I think it works so well, because even Spectacular Spider-Man plays it very close to regular comic storylines, whereas this gives us comic storylines just in a different package, in a different format, which I really, really liked. And this leads me into the world building, because without being in a different universe, you can't tell as expansive of a story as they do here in 30-minute episodes, and I think the way they format it is absolutely phenomenal. The first big cameo is in episode 6, in the episode titled Duel with the Devil, that features Daredevil. Charlie Cox voices him. You hear the Netflix theme song. I mean, it is absolutely perfect. It's just a moment of the episode. It's just a duel that plays into the overarching idea that Norman Osborn is obviously hiding something, but it works really well. Another cameo we got was Iron Man, and this obviously plays into not only Norman and and Doc Ock's beef, but also the Sokovia Accords and this general idea with Thaddeus Ross. I mean, there are so many politics and so many ideas going on in this series, so many storylines happening that allow for this world to be expanded so well, in my opinion. It's not about cameo for cameo's sake. I mean, we also got Doctor Strange being a pretty integral part of the entire series. I mean, they basically bookend the entire series with a Doctor Strange multiverse plot. And then we also get some villains that are more overarching than others. Scorpion, for example, and then Lonnie as well, who I'll talk about later. I mean, these are all character things that just are not possible in a story that is confined to one universe that is so fleshed out as the MCU. This is the perfect route to go down, in my opinion. But in my opinion, the best side character and arguably best character of the entire series is Lonnie, aka Tombstone. I think the evolution of this character is so perfectly done, and I was at one point kind of hoping he'd be the big bad for this season, but I really like that they turn him into Tombstone by the end, but his evolution is still being witnessed. You know, there's still so much for his character to do, and I'm glad they didn't just rush to a conclusion at the very end. I find it really interesting the way that Lonnie's character not only evolved, but also had this dynamic with Peter and Spider-Man by the second to last episode. Out of all of the plots and all of the insane things going on with the multiverse and Norman and Harry and this spiritual shit with Nico, I always go back to this series knowing that it is phenomenal because it's able to balance all of these phenomenal elements, and Lonnie is one of those things that never misses a beat throughout the entire series. And finally, before getting into my season 2 expectations, I do want to talk about the animation because I feel like that's the biggest hurdle for people getting into this series, and it's also my consistently biggest complaint about the entire show so far. I still think it looks so stiff, and even in the final 2 episodes where it did improve in regards to how much action we really were getting, they were literally just dropping frames, so it was less for them to animate, which was so frustrating. I firstly just don't really like the 3D look, and I think the 3D look is something that even Batman Cape Crusader struggled with, because the biggest problem with these city heroes is the fact that in 3D animation, the city looks so empty, and that truly, again, aside from me being just picky of how it looks, it really does impact the storytelling, especially in that penultimate episode. There's literally nothing going on in the city behind them. It's so frustrating to look at. But I will say I really enjoy the like comic style and kind of what they're going for. And in the finale, especially with the multiversal travel, it looked really cool. But other than that, they don't do it consistently enough, especially on a just general storytelling level. I feel like they could do a lot more on a creative level with that. And season 2 is halfway done being animated. Season 3, they're doing pitches right now, which we'll obviously talk about in just a second here. I do think they need to up the comic bookiness of where this series is going if they want the animation to be less of a complaint, I guess. But we're already 1 season deep. They're not changing the animation style. I don't think it looks that great, but I think the story is so phenomenal that I don't even care. And to wrap it up, I want to talk about where season 2 of Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man could possibly go. I mean, the final 10 minutes of this entire season is just one big montage, so there's a lot to talk about. But in the end of the penultimate episode, we also find out that Norman is making replicants of the spider that bit Peter. And obviously that one that came down during that big fight scene in the very beginning of the series, that's one of them that was Norman's, but there are still others, according to him and according to that little montage in the second to last episode. So I really wonder if that's still going to be a plot point, if some Spider-Verse type of thing is going to happen. We also know that Green Goblin will probably be here next season, and I think Green Goblin versus Doc Ock would be a really interesting fight to have because they've been hyping up that rivalry between Norman and Doc Ock a lot. We also see the symbiote from that final big fight sequence, and Norman discovers it at the end, which is super cool. I also really am curious as to see how the Nico spiritual stuff is going to be used, if it's going to be used in conjunction to the multiversal things, or if they're going to separate the multiverse and spiritual things / magical things like they do in the MCU, with kind of separating the Agatha magic side of it from the Doctor Strange multiverse magic side of it. We also see the Watcher for a second right when Doctor Strange leaves. I don't even give a shit about the Watcher anymore. I couldn't care less. Harry creates his own tech company, and Lonnie is actually a part of it, which obviously I think Peter had a hand in that. But at the same time, I don't really know what he's going to be doing if he is leading the 1/10 gang. But the biggest thing to really talk about here is just the fact that Doctor Strange was able to come into this episode, stop a multiversal threat, inform Peter that basically he can travel through different universes. Peter literally fought this venomous creature in the dark dimension. Traveling multiverses is an option in this Spider-Man series that is not in the MCU. I feel like that is such an interesting concept, but we obviously also have all these other storylines going on. So I really, really wonder how that story is going to play out in season 2, because again, I love the multiversal side of the MCU, and I think Spider-Man is ingrained in the multiversal aspect of this series so well, because to be completely honest, I feel like it is a little bit forced in the MCU because that is the overarching story that they're telling. So Spider-Man does have to be connected to it in some way, shape, or form. But here, from the first episode to the final episode, I mean, the series is quite literally, again, book-ended with multiversal ideas. I think it's integrated so well. I definitely want to see more of that. But finally, at the end of the finale, we do see that Peter's dad is alive and he is in jail. May was visiting him, and I am really interested to see where this story goes, because this is a type of story / personal Peter Parker storyline that we have never seen in at least like the media consumption other than comics of Spider-Man. So I really wonder where this is going to go. I wonder if they're going to make him an inspirational character, a villainous character. I don't know how they're going to connect this, but this drive and this connection between Peter and his dad is going to be brilliant. I am so excited. At the end of the day, your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man is absolutely amazing. It exceeded all of my expectations, even though the animation does look like cardboard sometimes. If you can get over that, the story is well worth watching. Overall, I'm going to give your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man an 8 out of 10. If you've seen or want to check out this show, let me know what you would think of it in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Peace.